Family at the Bank of Nevis are experts at picking the flowers that best describe you. Whether you're planning to treat yourself after a long work week or finally getting around to that closet update, you deserve all the special things that life has to offer, and the Bond Visa card is here to help you achieve it. With just a swipe, you can turn a last-minute lunch date with friends and family into something worth remembering, with memories that will last a lifetime. Pampering yourself just got a whole lot easier, and after all, you deserve every refreshing moment of it. The ability to make your travel arrangements at your own convenience, whether by sea or by air, now rests within the palm of your hand. With a single swipe, the Bond Visa card can put a world of difference between life and truly living, whereas the only limits you may have is your own imagination. Apply today. The Bank of Nevis Limited, improving the quality of life.
In your formative years, we were there. When you got the good news and the bad, we were right there with you. Through all your great adventures, we were always right by your side.
Hello and welcome to the OECS Link.
A conversation is a talk.
It's important to know where we've been, to know where we're going.
Hello, Dr. Jules.
Hi, how are you?
Join us every week on this station as we build relationships that uplift our region. Find us on all social media platforms. The OECS Link is powered by Republic Bank.
Went to the polls, as has been the custom approximately every 5 years since 1952. In many ways, the elections of 2020 were quite similar to all prior elections, in that it was hard fought by all candidates and all parties seeking to convince the electorate that he or she was best suited for office. The messaging, as usual, was about what most refer to as the fundamentals. One, we could talk about who would best handle the economy. We could talk about the bread and butter issues, the pocketbook issues. We could talk about personal safety and security, effectiveness when it comes to fighting crime. One side spoke of the next generation, next gen if you will, while another side spoke to a stronger, safer future. Well, in the end, the electorate agreed with or preferred the messaging that was put forward by one side over that of the other, hence the results. Now the elections of 2020 are over. They're now in the history books. And we thought that before the event goes too deep into the archives, we should take some time to, one, examine the campaign that was, and we will compare and contrast, among other things, the messaging, the format, the circumstance, the style. We'll also analyze the results. We'll get some historical perspective. We'll look at the lessons that we have learned from that election and see how those lessons can guide future elections. Although we don't have the benefit of exit polling as some jurisdictions do, we will do our best in hindsight to see if we can understand the who, the what, the when, the why, and how of the just concluded elections. To help me with the examination and the analysis, I am joined by, on my right, Clement O'Gara, and on my left, Fitzroy Edinburgh. I am Tony Nias. Welcome to ZIZ's presentation of Election 2020, the postmortem. As I said, we will go and begin with the campaign that was. We had a campaign that was, as I said, fought the usual way, in some ways. But in many ways it was different. We were fighting a campaign under conditions of COVID-19. We were fighting a campaign under the state of emergency. So, let's look at that campaign. Monarch, looking back at the campaign that was, what are your immediate thoughts on the campaign of 2020 as compared to the others you have seen before?
Well, and good evening to all the viewers and listeners to ZIZ, to Election 2020, a postmortem. I think that there was a lot of lessons learned from the campaign itself, being the virtual nature that it actually had to be. And there was a lot of creativity that came out of it, because now politicians or candidates were not able to, woo the crowd like they normally do, or get that enthusiasm from being on the platform and riling up the crowd with stuff. They basically had to do that on their own, because of the fact that they were basically in front of a virtual audience as opposed to a real audience. And I think out of that came a lot of interesting things that I think are gonna manifest itself in the future. And so I think it was a good thing. It was something that I think we all learn from. And future events, I know COVID is still around, and in certain places where a lot of our nationals live, and a lot of our nationals who visit for things like Carnival that's coming up, I think that there's where some of the creativity that was displayed during the election, I think that's where some of it is going to go. So I think it was a lesson learned, and a good lesson too.
Okay. Well, speaking of virtual campaigns, Fitzroy, we had two campaigns that had to run virtual campaigns. What are your thoughts as to, when you look at both campaigns, do you have any thoughts as to which may have been more effective? Apart from the results and what the results said, how did you see the two camps handling the virtual campaign?
Well, in terms of the virtual campaign, I just want to say good night to everyone who is listening to us this evening. In terms of the virtual campaign, it was definitely a change from the norm, from what we usually see. Usually there are meetings at places like Greenlands Park or somewhere in town or on a street nearby. This time around you have to be sat at your computer or on your phone. And I think that the virtual campaign gave as much as it's a change from the norm, it gave the parties a chance to take advantage of certain opportunities, such as the opportunity to reach more people. There are more persons who can be online looking at the virtual campaign than can stand up at Greenlands Park. Right. It also gave persons, the candidates, a chance to engage the electorate on an ongoing basis. So instead of just a nighttime meeting, you could also have day-to-day, such as programs each day, presenting different aspects of your manifesto. And I think that to reflect on what would have been done by the individual parties and the coalitions, I would say it's a 50-50 in terms of the effectiveness, besides looking at the results. Because once the regulations were put in place, we saw that both sides really jumped into head first and feet first into presenting their campaigns via social media.
Speaking of the campaign itself, be virtual, yeah. One of the things I noticed that in this campaign, and I think it had a lot to do with the fact that it was virtual and you were not in front of these massive crowds on a platform. One of the good things I saw coming out of that was that I really did not notice a whole lot of the personal attacks at the campaign, the character assassination and all of that, it really was missing in this campaign. And I'm not I'm not saying it to say I wanted it. I'm just saying that I noticed it. And maybe that in itself was good. Virtual campaign was good for that, because what you got was messaging, right? Whether you were talking about what's for the next generation, the next gen, or whether you were talking about a stronger, safer future, I didn't get a lot of personal attacks on the virtual campaign. Monarch, what were your thoughts?
No, I definitely agree with you. I think the candidates were able to articulate more of their policies and programs instead of, you know, when you're in front of a crowd and, I mean, you know, you have that adrenaline going and, you know, people are shouting and screaming, and so you're, you know, you ought to, you want to say something that rile them up even more.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's one of the things that was missing, and also a good thing as well, because I mean, I think, you know, it's time we go past the personal attacks when it comes to campaigning. I mean, for me, I think people seem as if that they were more interested in, you know, policy and programs, their future, other than, hey, you know, how the next candidate is doing or what they did in their personal life.
Yeah. One of the things too, well, COVID-19 kind of put us in a certain place for this election. And we just pointed out one of those places which actually was a good thing, and I hope, not that I hope COVID continues, but I hope that elections going forward will see more of that that kind of behavior on the platform, be it virtual or otherwise. Now, I am looking back at the campaign and looking at the two camps, the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party, the Team Unity grouping, and I have to look back to the dissolution of Parliament and look at how ready people were. I don't know if you recall that at some point it was mentioned that because we were under this COVID-19 watch and circumstances and state of emergency and all of that, then there was a comment made sometime during that whole period which spoke to putting the campaign on the back burner. I think that comment was made by, I think it was the AG that made that comment, and people had some issue with that. But then we had the dissolution of Parliament, which had to happen by, I think it had to happen by May anyway, right?
May the 14th, if I'm not
somewhere
mistaken,
around there.
yes.
But it was, Parliament was dissolved. And I also remember a comment made that because of the COVID-19 and all the things we were experiencing and the shutdown and all of that, we had some days where we would go out and we were allowed to go out for shopping. And so we would, you know, we line up and we go shopping, put on a mask 6 feet apart and all of that. And one of the comments made in response to that was, well, if we can line up to go shopping, supermarket, we can line up to vote. So, as we say locally, ring the bell then, right? And so, my question is then, when all of that was happening, and then we finally got the ringing of the bell, because, okay, we could go to vote. It seemed to me that somewhere along the line, even though there was the request that we ring the bell, I think some of us in St. Kitts were not really ready. What are your thoughts on that?
You could understand the AG's response to having an election versus doing the COVID-19 crisis, because he would be directly involved with the committee that's responsible for our response to COVID-19. So he's in the hot seat, himself and the senator at the time when the when they fix. So the question of their primary question would have been, are we interested in saving lives, or are we interested in winning an election? So you can really excuse the AG for being focused on the COVID-19 response. In terms of our readiness for the election, for the ringing of the bell, I think that elections tend to be a key part of our political discourse. We tend to be campaigning on an ongoing basis, and the campaign tends to ramp up about years before the expected election date. So I think our persons were ready, but at the same time we were knocked back by the COVID-19 crisis at the time, because you're standing in a line for 8 hours, you don't know when the next time you're going to be able to go to the shop. So things were a bit topsy-turvy for us, not the regular, not the norm that we're used to.
The thing that struck me about it is, the ringing of the bell is always an event here in our politics here in St. Kitts Nevis. Yeah, so I think that was something that was missing in a way. But as you say, I mean, there was a readiness like we've never seen before. Even though, just like normal, people were bantering all kind of different dates, whether we were going to go all the way down to August, as was constitutionally mandated. But yeah, I think that's, to me, that was one of the things that, I mean, because there's so much, we've seen so much creativity. I mean, going back forever, when it comes to ringing up the bell, we've seen hundreds of bells at some point in time. We've seen all the teasing with the bells and everything like that. So, yeah, I think that was an event that was definitely missing. And one thing to take into consideration. Yeah. Going forward.
Well, there's more. When we come back from this break, we will take a look at some of the newcomers in this campaign, and we'll talk about them somewhat on the other side of this break. Stay tuned.
Life can be more fulfilling when we take the time out to smell the roses. And that's why your friends and family at the Bank of Nevis are experts at picking the flowers that best describe you. Whether you're planning to treat yourself after a long work week or finally getting around to that closet update, you deserve all the special things that life has to offer, and the Bond Visa card is here to help you achieve it. With just a swipe, you can turn a last-minute lunch date with friends and family into something worth remembering, with memories that will last a lifetime. Pampering yourself just got a whole lot easier, and after all, you deserve every refreshing moment of it. The ability to make your travel arrangements at your own convenience, whether by sea or by air, now rests within the palm of your hand. With a single swipe, the Bond Visa card can put a world of difference between life and truly living, whereas the only limits you may have is your own imagination. Apply today. The Bank of Nevis Limited, improving the quality of life.
What's your reason?
The staff here is very friendly.
Price is very reasonable and good, and also they have good loyalty.
Nice. She come.
What's your reason?
Products fresh and nice.
The prices are right. The store is clean.
There's always a great reason to shop at Hortsport's Value Mart IGA.
One stop shop right here, Value Mart.
Hortsport's Value Mart IGA, where
Shop Smart, Shop Value Mart is the best store on the island.
Welcome back to Election 2020, a postmortem. I'm Tony Nias, and I have with me here to help with this discussion Clement Monaco-Garo and Fitzroy Edinburgh. And we are discussing the campaign that was. In this last campaign, we saw some new faces, some new blood entering into it, male and female. And we always talk about how we should create opportunities for women in politics, create opportunities for the next generation in politics, and all of that. What were your thoughts on what you saw with respect to the new entrance into the campaign?
Well, with the new entrants, I would think that they brought a breath of fresh air. I'm hoping that they will bring new ideas to the fore when they present their ideas, whether it's in Parliament or whether it's among their own party members. I think it also gives us the opportunity to look gives us a chance to look further down the road to those who may have lost the election, even though they're newcomers, and think that, well, perhaps they have another chance, and if they will, perhaps predict if they will do better next time around.
Well, one of the things too, when we talk about new entrants into the political arena, we had Mr. Keeler Byron Nisbet, who just entered and won. Jonel is a youngster too, but he actually ran before. We had Ninky over in number 6. We had another young candidate in number 7, I think. But overall, though, when we talk about the campaign and candidates and strategy, and one of the things that I looked at was on the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party team, and looking at the 8 candidates that they fielded for this election, I couldn't help but looking at the marketing they did and their slogans, and from my background, I have to look at it in a critical way. Because what I saw was the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party saying this was the next gen campaign. But then when I looked down the slate, I didn't see a next gen. So I felt the numbers of next gen candidates, the ratio to the older candidates didn't really fit to me. I don't know if you saw the same thing.
Well, in terms of looking at both parties, you could see that there were 2 on Labour side who were new, well, not new candidates, but young candidates. And also on Team Unity's side, you have persons who would have been running for 3 times. I think the gentleman from number 10 would have been his 3rd try at federal elections. The gentleman from number 11 who beat Patrice, the former AG in number 11. In terms of the younger candidates, we see John L. Powell, who would have been ambassador before. Now he is MP for number 2. Right. We see Akila, Ms. Nisbet, who would have been a senator in the past administration. Now she is an MP for this for number 3. We can see that there is room for improvement on both sides for persons who are younger to come into the fray and present their new ideas, to present their views, and hopefully push our country in a different direction.
Yeah. Speaking of younger, social media is something that the younger generation gravitate to a lot, right? And social media was in use a lot in this campaign. And of course, rightly so, because we were locked in and all of that. Now, one of the things I noticed though, apart from candidates, I believe that we had a groundswell of young voters this time around when you compare with other elections. And I'm wondering if social media, Monarch, may have been partly responsible for more young people participating in this election.
Well, in addition to that, I think that it had to do with what the campaigns presented. I think over the years we've seen where a lot of the campaigns involve a high level of top-class entertainment. Team Unity definitely did an excellent job because they featured, it was totally local entertainment every night, and on the Labour side they did a little bit of that as well too. So I think that may have captivated a lot of the young people, because remember, prior to the election, once we were in lockdown, I mean, everybody started to be creative. We had the vaccine shows, so we had people who were already interested in going online and looking at live stuff, live performances and stuff like that. And the continuation of that during the campaign, I think it captured a lot of the young people. Now, One thing I want to say about social media, though, and especially Facebook, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything that we could do about it, but I mean, you know, I'm telling you, some people got really, really nasty on Facebook, especially a lot of these, you know, fake profiles. And I don't know if there's anything that we can do about it, but I think to me, that was the sullying or the dirty part of the campaign. Other than that, I think, you know, social media did well. It shows that St. Kitts Nevis has a great percentage of penetration when it comes to social media. I think that was something that came out years ago, and I think it's still continuing, where people follow everything that's happening on social media, and in this case, the 2020 elections.
Yeah, I think one of the staying on social media for a minute here, I think when it comes to the younger voter, you would more often than not catch them on social media, because I don't see too many of the younger voter going to a public meeting. It just doesn't happen unless you have, like you say, somebody headlining, some overseas entertainment comes in, and so they're going for that purpose. They're really not going for the right?
And I know, not to cut you off, Tony, but I know we were talking about you know, younger candidates. From my recollection, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We had 11 candidates. I think at least 8, maybe 9 of them were in that young age. And so that too, I think, was a big factor in capturing the younger generation.
Interesting point, yeah. Because naturally young people would be attracted by young people. Correct. And so I guess it says then that social media worked for the campaign, and maybe the campaigns have learned that maybe they should use it more, and they'll get more bang for their buck. Well, let's also talk about what we saw on the streets. Because of the fact that we were locked down, we didn't see a whole lot of activity on the streets. As a matter of fact, as far as signage and so on, I don't know if we saw some signage, but I don't think we saw a lot of that. A lot of money wasn't spent on signage this time.
I mean,
as a matter of fact, it looked to me like some of the signs that were up were old signs that they pulled out. So I don't think they spent a whole lot of money on signage this time.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, I'm not a politician, I'm not an activist, so I don't know. Never run anybody's campaign. But I mean, do these things really matter?
Well, that's a question. That is a good question.
I mean, especially this year.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, you know, the money could have been used, you know, a lot better.
Do we? Well, since you mentioned as to whether that matters, I always had a question as to whether or not manifestos matter a whole lot. I mean, do people actually read manifestos? I mean, well, I have every manifesto.
I'll be honest with you. I didn't see either of them from either side, so I have no clue what they look like or what is included in them. Because I'm expecting the politicians to come on the platform, and if you're not able to explain or articulate what you're going to do, then you probably don't deserve my vote.
Yeah. I think what happens with manifestos, to me, serve a purpose, but I don't think that a lot of times that the people are actually reading them in that campaign. But I always say they are good to have, because when I make a decision to vote next time, it's a document I can go back to. So in that sense, I can, you know, your thoughts on that?
I agree with Mr. Ogawa, because that's one of the things I'm looking for whenever we have an election campaign. I'm looking for the manifesto.
Okay.
As you said before, those who are older are more used to going out to the political meetings will be there. Whereas I think the younger persons are looking for some sort of documentation to say, okay, this is what you intend to do over your term in office. So I myself was looking for the manifestos from both parties, and we must also recognize that in 2020 we had a very condensed campaigning period. So there was the ringing of the bell, there was the announcement of the nomination day and election day, and then shortly after, in a very short space of time, there was the election and the election results. So I don't think that in terms of board and campaign materials, of course there was a quick response, because I remember on my street, the boards went up practically the next day. Almost every post was covered, but at the same time, it was a short time, or a short period span of time for there to be boards and campaigning and publishing of manifestos. Because generally when we publish manifestos here in St. Kitts Nevis, we publish them after the bell has been rung. Right.
Which to me kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the politicians have a way of saying, well, we don't want to bring out our stuff too early because the other side will take, utilize it, especially if you're in opposition. You want to hold on to stuff because you feel as if that the government is going to, take some of it from you. But I think that they really, not that I am against manifestos, but I'm against the manifesto if you're going to bring it out a week before the election without even giving the candidates, I mean, not the candidates, but the public, the electorate, a chance to read, what's going on. Tony, I agree with you. Yes, it's a way to hold people who are elected responsible for over the 5-year period, because you can then go back and say, hey, you promised this, and this is what you do. So certainly I understand both sides of the argument.
Okay. Well, there you say.
Policies, I do agree with you that it shouldn't be a week before election, but these should be ongoing policies that your party has. So if your party has a website or a headquarters, it's somewhere I should be able to go to at any point in time and see, okay, this is what your party's policies are. Because there is the threat of someone stealing your idea, but then again, nobody can execute on your idea the way you would.
Well, what that says is that timing is everything, right? And so, with that, it is time for a break, and we'll come back. When we come back, we're going to engage you, because you get a chance to weigh in on some of the things we're discussing here. Give you some numbers: 466-2666, 662-8674, 767-4765. There's an overseas line that is 239-645-4500. When we come back, it's your time to engage us.
Hello and welcome to the OECS Link.
A conversation is a talk.
It's important to know where we've been, to know where we're going.
Hello, Dr. Jules.
Hi, how are you?
Join us every week on this station as we build relationships that uplift our region. Find us on all social media platforms. The OECS Link is powered by Republic Bank.
Life can be more fulfilling when we take the time out to smell the roses. And that's why your friends and family at the Bank of Nevis are experts at picking the flowers that best describe you. Whether you're planning to treat yourself after a long work week or finally getting around to that closet update, you deserve all the special things that life has to offer. And the Bond Visa card is here to help you achieve it. With just a swipe, you can turn a last-minute lunch date with friends and family into something worth remembering, with memories that will last a lifetime. Pampering yourself just got a whole lot easier, and after all, you deserve every refreshing moment of it. The ability to make your travel arrangements at your own convenience, whether by sea or by air, now rests within the palm of your hand. With a single swipe, the Bond Visa card can put a world of difference between life and truly living, whereas the only limits you may have is your own imagination. Apply today. The Bank of Nevis Limited, improving the quality of life.
Welcome back to Election 2020, a postmortem. And we will go at this point into, we spoke about the campaign. Now we'll look at the results and what they said. First of all, when we look at this particular campaign and the results of this campaign, I want to first of all go to the broader picture before we start going into the actual the constituencies. When I look at the registration roll, for example, I see that we continue on that upward trajectory when it comes to registration. Since about 1980, we have been constantly going up in terms of our registration. And this particular election, we had some 48,000 plus. But I always wonder, if you have 48,000 people on your registration roll, and we have a census that says that we have, what is it, 52? Okay, 52. So it means that of the 52,000 people that we say we have, more than 48,000 of those people are qualified to vote. More than 48,000 people of that 52,000 people are over 18, right? So it tells me that a whole chunk of that doesn't live here, and we're not counted in the census, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Therefore, when we look at the election that just passed, there's no wonder then that we should have a lower voter turnout than we normally have. What kind of numbers are you seeing, Fitzroy?
When I was looking at the voter turnout for this election, it was remarkably low compared to the last two elections. In 2015, our voter turnout was 72%. Compared to 2010, would have been 80%. This time around was 58%. So considering that there's a huge chunk of persons who are not only overseas but unable to come home to vote, I would say that would account for the difference in voter turnout comparing this year's election to the last two elections that we've had.
In Nevis, they were even lower than the national average. They were 47%. So it definitely tells us, tells us something.
Yeah. And as we go through, we're going to find out that there's a significant difference because of the fact that we didn't have the overseas voters. And it's going to be interesting to look at some of these constituencies where it's bright, it's shining bright with respect to overseas voters. Before we go there though, another thing that comes out every election, well, with the exception of 1984 and 1989, is that the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party always have gotten the majority of the votes. Popular vote, sorry, right. Right, with the exception of two elections, 1984 and 1989. How do they come out this time around?
This time around, the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party got just about 37% of the popular vote. The People's Action Movement would have got 29%. PLP would have garnered 13.4%. You have to remember that they ran in almost 3 constituencies. The CCM would have got 12.6% of the popular vote, and NRP would have gotten 8%. And of course, we can't not mention our independent candidate who got 0.04% of the vote our own country.
Okay, right. Okay, let's look at some of these constituencies. We can go. Let's begin with 11. We'll work our way down. 11 finally has changed hands. When you look at where was Jeffers in 2015 in terms of the results to Patrice Nisbet, who has been holding on to that seat for quite some time, compared with what happened this time around? what numbers you have in. You have some numbers for 2015.
I don't have numbers.
Let me see. 2015, he did lose that. Sorry, Patrice won that seat in 2015, and the year before, and in 2020, we see here that it was CCM 1107 to NRP 910, right? So he would have made up the deficit and is able to come to bring in that seat in 2020, right? Even in, and so that is one of the new, one of the changes from this election. And I gather that the CCM will be trying to make that a permanent event.
But look at the numbers, though. As it registered voters 4,005.
Right.
And we had just a little bit over half, 2035, that actually cast their ballots in this election. So it's like almost 50, just a little bit, what, lower than 50%?
Is that because people stayed home or people stayed or people stayed overseas? Right?
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at it, it's a trend throughout most of the constituencies. So it'll be interesting to figure out exactly how many overseas voters of the 48,000 registered people that we have.
I remember there was a report from the AG a couple of years ago, well, about a year or two ago, where he mentioned that it was a good near 20% of the roll was actually overseas. So that would be significant. I don't know. If that is the case, that would be significant. In constituency number 10, we, well, that's not a surprising constituency. So, where the son of Nurse Hanley, who previous candidate,
correct,
came in to take on the replacement for Van Zemring, Evelyn, and went the same way that his mother did. So no real surprise there.
For me, though, I think at one point, and I don't know, maybe this was a rumor, where they said, well, okay, hey, they're going to just concede that constituency. And so it seems as if, Hanley, even though he, was constantly campaigning for years, and then he went silent for a little bit because of all the confusion, whether he was going to be or he wasn't going to be. And then at the last minute, he came in. So I think that was a little bit, unfair to him. And I didn't even count him. So as a, in the candidates that I was counting as, somebody who was in the young age. So
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, 167 votes. Nothing to talk about, but hey, you have to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere.
Yep.
And you say he's a youngster.
Definitely.
In number 9, where the premier ran, he did well there, 1693 to 1155. We have the numbers for before that. In 2015, what did the premier do then?
In 2015, he had over 2,000 votes, 2,033 to NRP's 1,715 votes. So you can see that there's a difference in terms of how the votes would have been spread. There's definitely a large drop for the NRP.
Right.
And also a significantly less large drop for the premier. So that might give some indication as to who is getting those overseas voters in that constituency.
Gotcha. And number 8, we had Eugene Hamilton there at 2232. in 2232 was his count to 2208, giving him a 24 margin. All right, that is significantly lower than the margin he had before in 2015, because in 2015 I think he was over 200. Yeah, right. And right.
One of the things about this constituency as well. Of course, it's the largest constituency in terms of registered voters, 6,948, and as opposed to, and I'm just looking at a glance here, I'm not a math scholar or anything like that. I think Fitzroy can do a better job than me. But look at the amount of people that actually voted, 4,450. Mm-hmm. If I'm not mistaken, that's probably the highest percentage of the votes cast in the different constituencies.
Yeah.
And just looking at it with my raw eyes, that's what it looks like.
Mm-hmm. Votes cast per constituency. But I think number 7 in terms of percentages would have dwarfed that.
Yeah, number 8, I'm showing like a 64% for number 8. As far as the turnout.
Yeah.
Right? But number 7 had a 67%.
In terms of turnout?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, because they 24,
right.
87 actually cast their votes.
And number 7 is interesting because there was a newcomer, new challenger there. And the count was 1870 to 607, right? And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that is probably a larger margin. Yeah, than before, right? If we go to number 6, then number 6 is interesting because, again, there's a newcomer, and for the first time, someone has been able to go over the 500 mark in number 6 up against the veteran Dr. Douglas. All right? So we'll stop at number 6. We'll take a break. We will come back and we'll go through some others.
In your formative years, we were there. When you got the good news and the bad, we were right there with you. Through all your great adventures, we were always right by your side. Now that life has thrown us a curveball, we are still here. And as we navigate this difficult period, the SKCCU will continue to be there for you and your family to help you through. We will assist you in safely and efficiently accessing your funds through our digital platforms, online banking, mobile banking, ATMs, and even our drive-through services. We can get through this together with responsible financial decisions by making food and medication a priority, practicing proper hygiene, maintaining social distancing, and constant prayer.
We're here for you.
We're still here.
We will get through this together.
SKCCU will continue to be your financial partner for life.
Welcome back to Election 2020, a postmortem. We are just going through the constituencies quickly here, one by one, and we are at number 5. Number 5 saw the deputy Sean Richards, 1296 to Labour candidate Kenny Douglas at 721. Sean has been able to increase that lead and gave him a margin of 575 votes. And I believe that would be the highest margin in number 5 ever, I believe, for a candidate, 575. In what was it in
2015, the difference was just about 300 votes.
Right.
What you see is, what's interesting is that you see less people voting for the Labour Party candidate and not necessarily more people voting for the PAM Party candidate, because you have 1,245, 1245 in 2015, and in 2020 is 1296. So there's a difference of about 51 votes for Mr. Richards, whereas you see the Labour Party candidates' votes go from almost 900 to just above 700 votes.
Okay. All right. Number 4. Number 4 again is an interesting constituency because when we look at that, we see the Honorable Lindsey Grant there this time around doing much better than he did before. I think he won that constituency by some 32 or 34, somewhere around there, in the last election. And in this election, he even went on to win every single box in that constituency, which also is something that has not happened before, right? And so, again, what is giving us those kind of results?
Unique amongst the constituencies. It's the only constituency where once the person wins the election, you can tell who is going to win. Once the person wins the seat, you can tell which party is going to win the election. So if you look back over time, you will see that historically, whichever party wins in number 4 goes on to win the election.
Okay,
and also for Mr. Grant, you will see his lead has spread from 36 votes to just about 350 votes, which is a 10-to-1 margin, 10-to-1 increase.
That's serious stuff. Number 3, really interesting constituency. It's a constituency I know a little something about, but has never changed hands in my lifetime. So, and has now changed hands by some 89 votes, I think was the margin there. And what is interesting to me when I look at that constituency, I mean, like I said, I know a little something about that constituency, and box by box. And when I saw a box number 1, polling division 1, at I think it was 175 to 181 or something like that. That kind of difference never happened before. That has always been a strong box for the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party. And then if you go down into the boxes down at the Apostolic Faith, which is, I think it's 4, boxes 4, A and B, I think it is. Again, another strong hole. And the candidate for the People's Labour Party was able to win one of those boxes actually and stay close in the other. So, and then you move on to NEMA. Well, it's not NEMA this time, but they used the Baptist Church, the New Baptist Church. Formerly NEMA was the location. Again, in that area, was able to hold tight. So, on the night of elections, you know, once you saw that happening, and from my experience, polling division 6, A and B, are going to be good boxes for GLP candidates. So you knew something was happening, and so that was interesting to me. In number 2, I saw something kind of glaring there at me when it comes to, when we talk about overseas voters. In number 2, the candidate for the People's Action Movement actually got less votes than he did in the election before. He got 1654 this time around, but he got 1660 in the last election. It's not significant, but so let's say he pretty much got the same amount of votes, right? But look at the Labour Party candidate. What she got this time versus what she got the time before. Significantly less votes. Exactly. So it tells me that the culprit lies overseas. Right? I mean, that to me, number two, was quite glaring when we analyze as to why and why this is happening, because he really didn't have to get any more votes to win. She just had to be deprived of. Then let's put it that, if you want to put it that way.
And that's one of the constituencies as well that actually had over 2,000 people not voting, even though, I mean, you know, we had, what, 5,418 registered voters. Of that, only 3,087 voted. So definitely the overseas
So
vote.
it could be that in constituency number 2, almost 2,000 people, I would say, usually come from overseas.
But you know, it would be interesting though. What would be interesting, and I can't imagine that would not happen during the next 5 years. I know that we're gonna, you know, probably talk about electoral reform and stuff like that. It would be interesting to see what these numbers look like as it. I mean, you know, in regards to people living here who are on the register, as opposed to people who are living overseas. It would be definitely interesting to see that.
Okay. And we come to constituency number 1, where the PAM candidate at 1601 to Labour candidate 1658 I have here, which is a difference of some 57 votes. Again, that's a heavy registration constituency, 6,002. And we had 3,300 plus, what's that, 3,349 votes cast there. And again, what did that look like in 2015?
It was razor thin.
A vote difference of 4 votes between the winning candidate and the losing candidate. There was also, for both parties that would have run in 2015, there was also a drop off in the number of votes cast for those candidates, cast for those parties. So the PAM candidate in 2015 would have gotten 1,731 votes, while the Labour candidate got 1,727. This time around, we see both getting just over 1,600 votes. So the PAM candidate got 1,601 votes, while the Labour candidate got 1,658 votes.
58.
So that is one of the, I would say, 3 or 4 constituencies where you always find the race is tight, the race is very close.
Okay. Well, I think it's a good time to say, though, that all the constituencies that we went through are the results that was returned or declared. But we got to remember, though, that there are petitions for 1, 2, 3,
every
4,
constituency except
5, and 8?
Except 6.
Except 6 and 1. Well,
every constituency,
every constituency except 6.
And the ones in Nevis.
And the ones in Nevis. Both the Labour Party and the PAM candidate has filed petitions. So those are still to be determined, they're pending. But
well, we don't have to go through what Guyana is going through. As a matter of fact, I got an opportunity to watch a little bit of the CCJ hearing today, as it relates to the Guyana independence. So it's very interesting that, I mean, you know, you can have an election on the 2nd of March and still don't know the results on the 1st of July. Very, very interesting. So, I know we'll wait and see. I mean, these cases are pretty hard to prove. And from my basic legal knowledge, I mean, you can't really make any changes once you file your cases. So it's not like if you find some new evidence, you could add that to it. And I stand to be corrected by the legal luminaries out there. But as far as I know, once you file, that's what you have to go with.
Yeah. Well, according to the National Assembly's Elections Act, a couple of things. One, you must file within 21 days. Secondly, it stops there. You don't appeal these. Once the decision is made, they're not cases that you can appeal. They stop right there. But interestingly though, one of the things, and maybe this is part of what pushed the candidate in #1 to file a petition. When you look at the rejected, if you have 96 rejected ballots or spoiled, then it is cause for concern. I mean, I must, grant that. It is cause for concern because never, I try to look back at elections and constituencies. I've never seen 96 rejected ballots in any constituency.
Compared to all the others.
Yeah, I mean, and even if you just look at, correct.
34 in #9 is the highest.
Right.
You know, compared to 96.
So something happened there, but we will wait on the courts to to tell us what happened. Good time to take a break, and we'll come back and continue our discussion.
Home. It means something different to everyone. It's a place you love, a place as unique as you are, a place where you can be yourselves, a place for life's big surprises, and not to mention the small ones. Moments to cherish, and moments that last a lifetime. It's a place for nurture, and a place where you can grow together. It's home. So whether you're building, purchasing, or renovating, the Bank of Nevis is here to open the door, giving you the confidence to dream and the help you need to get there with a mortgage loan from the Bank of Nevis. The Bank of Nevis Limited, improving the quality of life.
Okay, welcome back to our election 2020 postmortem. Now that we have looked at the results, we've looked at the campaign, are there anything that we have just learned from this election, Monarch, that could help us going forward?
I think we've learned to, we can stay home and hear all the candidates do their thing virtually. But on a more serious note, though, I think, and you mentioned it earlier, Tony, I think the fact that, there was no audience in front of you to rile you up. Candidates now had to stick to policies and programs and what they're going to do, as opposed to the mudslinging that we're accustomed to. And we know, in 2015 there was a lot of mudslinging. On the other hand, though, I think what it did is we had this so many fake profiles on Facebook. Just saying whatever they wanted. To me, that was the downfall of the whole thing. People on either side just, ranting and raving.
How do we fix that, though? How do we fix fake profiles?
Well, I think that we got to report them to Facebook. Facebook is known to take down stuff take down your profile if you're saying things that are not true. Now, it's not the easiest thing to do. You know, to me and I understand, you know, the difficulty in policing that. But to me, that was my disappointment. Overall, though, I thought that the campaign, I thought that both of them were very creative. I mean, they couldn't just come like they normally do, you know, on a stage talking all night. They had to do different things, and so it made it unique in a way that it wasn't just all talk. I mean, you know, everybody tried to do some, you know, different things, and I think we could learn from them, not only for elections going forward, but just the way that we do things virtually here in St. Kitts Nevis.
Fitzroy?
How do we get rid of fake profiles? I think voter education and giving persons the tools they need to sort through the information that they get to see, is this true? Is this relevant to what's happening around me? Are there multiple sources to what I'm hearing, to what I'm seeing? So I think that having a population that's information literate, being able to sort through information, separate the fake information from what's real, would really help us to sort out the fake profiles and make those ineffective.
Well, as we go forward, we get all these lessons here from the election that was. It always brings us back to electoral reform. How do we reform the system that we have? And let's pick out a couple of things. For example, Monarch, you know, we were here until the next day. I mean, at what point do we change this so that we're not here? Why can't we count in a different way or in a different place? What can we do so that we're not here till the next morning?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are two models. If we're going to stick to the non-electronic that we do, then the Dominica has a model that works. As far as I know, when the votes are counted, and I'm not quite sure whether they're counted at the place where they at the polling stations. That's what I meant. Thank you. But even if they move from one place to the next, in order for them to be counted, I think that we should get the unofficial numbers. The unofficial numbers basically gives you the result like it did in Dominica, because the broadcasters in Dominica were clear to let the folks know that, hey, these are the unofficial numbers. The official numbers will come from the Electoral Office, the supervisor of elections. I think that would definitely help, because it can't be that much different. It can't be that much different, I mean, you know, once you've already counted the votes. On the other hand, Anguilla on Monday basically taught you know, the whole Caribbean a lesson, because as they claimed, it's only the Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands, British Virgin Islands, and Anguilla in the Caribbean that's using the electronic system that they use. I mean, the election results in 7 districts, and in addition to the 7 districts, they had the 4 at-large candidates as well. They were finished counting in 10:30, minutes to 11. And so, I mean, we're either gonna spend the money to go to the full electronic system where we don't have all this rancor about counting and recounting and going back and forward. I mean, yes, in the electronic system, they did recount, because I think the winning party in Anguilla requested three recounts. But it's, I mean, you could see everything, I mean, you know, as it is done right there. We don't have to go over and over again. I mean, it shouldn't take 29 hours. I mean, I know in Guyana it's taken 6 months. But it shouldn't.
But that's not the model you want.
No, far from the model.
Okay. I had a discussion, for example, when we talk about counting polling stations, and there have been the suggestions floating around that maybe we should count where we vote and instead of moving the boxes around. But in speaking to the legal minds, I was told that, well, the only person that can return is the returning officer, and you have one. So, I don't know, we will have to change the legislation, either to have more than one returning officer in each of these locations, or something. I mean, I guess the AG, and they'll have to figure out how we do that. The other thing too, as you speak to the recount, one of the things I was also told is that there's really nothing that stops a person from asking for another recount. So you can recount and recount and recount. And I would think at some point the person in charge will say, look, you had enough. But I'm told it's not.
That is definitely ridiculous. I mean, you can't continue recounting forever. So, I mean, hey, it takes a 2/3 majority in the parliament to make decisions of a constitutional matter as it relates to changing anything. And we do have that now. So let's hope that there is some kind of move going forward to institute electoral reform in ways that definitely, helps us. We get to celebrate more. If the if the results are known by 11 o'clock, we can party for the rest of the night. You know what I mean? Instead of sitting here, wondering, okay, when is the next result gonna come in for number 8?
To move on to have a beverage.
Exactly.
The other thing is, speaking of reforms, when we look at, as we went through these constituencies, one of the things that strike you is how much they're out of whack in terms of the numbers.
Registered voters, yeah.
You have a constituency that has 6,900. You have a constituency that has 2,000.
1774.
Okay, 1774. Exactly. I mean, that
I wasn't born
is
then,
that is what you call. I don't think that when you look at the legislation, which speaks to having the constituencies as near equal as possible, I don't think that's what they meant.
No, and I think the equal part of it is it relates to, if I'm not correct, residents as opposed to registered voters. But with the correct. Yeah, with the amount of inhabitants, then you can, I think basically looking at it, I think everybody can literally go around maybe 3,000 something in each constituency to kind of balance it out. Because I think it's unfair. I think it's unfair that one person have to, look out for almost 7,000 people.
That's right.
And there's another candidate who just have to look out for less than 2,000 people. Exactly.
Right.
I mean, hey, if I was the man looking out for less than 2,000 people, ain't nobody could beat me.
You're getting more pay too. You're getting more pay when when you look at it. Right?
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, because to win that constituency, all it took was 710 votes. 710 votes to win constituency number 10.
Yeah, and you have the exact same vote and voice in parliament as the guy who had to fight to convince a majority of 609, 6,009. Right. So boundaries is one of the issues that we're going to have to deal with. Go ahead.
So I would say our viewers are seeing a graphic showing the relative sizes of the constituencies around the country. We can see that 8 to 1 and 9 are fairly large compared to 10 and 11 and 3 and 4. So
I can't even see 10 from here.
Right? Yeah.
So maybe a part of our discussion should be how we're going to address the boundaries of the constituencies, and also how we're going to add more constituencies.
Well, I gather that there are a couple of ways to solve this problem, either through a realignment, redrawing, or by adding constituencies to accomplish the same thing. And if you do that, remember there are certain rules that guide that. If you Nevis must have 1/3 of the constituencies, the overall constituencies. So if we add a constituency in St. Kitts, we must, go until we can get 2/3. So 2 in St. Kitts, 2 in Nevis, giving us 15 constituencies, 5 over there, 10 here, would be the next place we would go if we were going that road. But something definitely has to be done because that can't be what it was intended by the legislation.
And,
right?
and the mere fact that the boundaries that we're voting on right now is still the 1981 boundaries, 31 years old. I mean, with the change in demographics here in St. Kitts and Nevis, I can't imagine that, I mean, you know, this is even fair to the voters and also to the candidates, because, I mean, you know, Eugene Hamilton basically came this close to losing. I mean, you know, he can have a good argument. Hey, I had 5 times as much as some of these other candidates, you know, as it relates to registered voters to look after. You know, so I mean, and I think that it's definitely, you know, unfair, as you say. We can go either ways, and the key to me though is not to wait until the last minute.
Yeah.
I think we know where that took us the last time it was done, and so we need to do it early so that we can get it out the way. People can know exactly what's happening, where where their candidates are gonna be running, so that they can prepare themselves. I think it's only fair to the electorate.
And that's a good place to take a break. When we come back, we will continue more on electoral reform and the future elections here in St. Kitts and Nevis. We'll be back in a moment.
What's your reason?
Affordable prices.
Lots of products, lots of things to buy. Brilliant. Fantastic.
The cleanliness and the spaciousness.
What's your reason?
It's a very clean place. The things are reasonable.
There's always a great reason to shop at Hortsport's Value Mart IGA.
It's cool. The friendliness of the staff.
Hortsport's Value Mart IGA, where...
Hello and welcome to the OECS link.
A conversation is a talk.
It's important to know where we've been, to know where we're going.
Hello, Dr. Jules.
Hi, how are you?
Join us every week on this station as we build relationships that uplift our region. Find us on all social media platforms. The OECS link is powered by Republic Bank.
Welcome back to Election 2020, a postmortem. Continuing on the discussion of the future, where we go from here, and electoral reform, one of the things that I, you know, it's kind of one of my things that I, you know, look at, and it's kind of dear to me, is this whole idea of, you know, how we say in this country, you know, well, from way back, catch them with their pants down, kind of thing, and Prime Minister got the date in his back pocket and all of that. Somehow I believe that is undemocratic. Because here's why I say that. I say that because what you have is one individual in a democracy that knows when you can go to vote. And to me, I mean, I've always said that is undemocratic. So I believe that if we put in a fixed date for election, then everybody in the whole world knows when it's election day. And nobody is advantaged or disadvantaged. Everybody gets to prepare for election.
Come on, Tony, that spoils the fun. What fun it is if we know exactly what day we got to vote. We wait. I mean, we go to these meetings, you know. I mean, the crowd go to these meetings to rally. I mean, you know, they go with their bell in their hand. Exactly. That's part of the fun. But then again, maybe the virtual campaigning, you know, helps us to eliminate that. But yeah, I mean, on a serious note, I mean, you know, I think it's time for us to now start changing, you know, some of the stuff that we're accustomed to doing. Including, I know you talk about the fixed date for election, also the 2-term for the Prime Minister as well. That is something to be considered as well, you know. And I said the earlier we start talking about these things, I think the better it's going to be for us, because I think that the electorate needs to be involved. I don't think that, you know, it should be a decision made by the politicians only.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of staying with fixed dates for a moment, I did some research and I came across, we operate on the Westminster system. Funny thing is that the people who gave us that system have now changed, They themselves have said, no, this ain't good. This is not good. And the British themselves have gone to a system where they have taken away that power from the Prime Minister. And they have given it to Parliament. Parliament are the only ones that can dissolve Parliament. So it is no longer up to and determine the date. It is no longer in the hands of the Prime Minister as we have here. All right? So I thought it was interesting that the same people who gave us the system that we talk about, that we operate on, they themselves have recognized that is not good.
And so many of our laws as well.
Right, and they have changed their own system to do that.
So I think that reflects what it means to be in a democracy, that over time you can change what you're doing. You can look at what you're doing objectively and decide, well, I want to change this to make it that much better. I think in addition to fixed dates for elections, we can also look at recall procedures for our MPs. Perhaps after 2 years after the election, we can decide, well, we don't like what this MP is doing for our constituency. There's some sort of threshold for us to recall an MP and have a by-election, as opposed to just waiting for 3, 4, 5 years or waiting until the Prime Minister decides, hey, let's ring the bell and give you another chance to vote. What if the persons in the constituencies could then say, I want to change our MP? We should also look at, in terms of, if we're moving away from our regular way of electing persons to using electronic voting, perhaps we can also consider online voting. We know we have a large demographic of persons who are overseas. It may not be feasible or financially open to them, for all of them to come back to vote. Perhaps if we had an online voting system, we can have the persons in Florida, New York, Birmingham, and so on be able to vote in our elections. So something to think about.
Okay, but speaking of overseas, the question that's up in the air all through the last term, never happened, but it was in the air. And we saw the effects of it in this election, the overseas vote, or the lack thereof. And what was on the table in the last term was whether or not we should require residents or persons wanting to register, we should require a residency period. Now, I don't like to say overseas voter in the same breath, because it makes it look like we're talking about overseas voter. It is anybody. So basically what we're talking about is scrapping the entire list and making every person re-register, and you must prove that you've been resident in that constituency that you wish to vote in for a period, whether it be 3 months, 6 months, or whatever. And I know every time you say that, somebody think of the overseas vote and they say, well, how are they going to do it? But what's your thought?
Well, I would definitely love to see a re-registration of our voters list, so we can get an idea of persons who are invested in the future of our country, so that we can see, well, how many persons are going to come home, make sure that they are 3 months resident or 6 months resident, or how many of us who may not be here on a regular basis, such as our students. How do we handle our students? How do we handle the persons who we send overseas into our foreign missions? Are they then resident in our embassies and our missions overseas? Do we consider them to be resident and allow them to vote? Because not only are persons living overseas, but we also have persons who work for us and they are overseas. So how do we accommodate them in such a system?
But there are different aspects as well, as Fitzroy just mentioned. There are so many different aspects that have to be taken into consideration, and that's the reason why I said we got to go. If we're going to go, we need to go early. Now, some people may say, hey, 6 months residency is taking us back to pre-independence, because that's what it was then, until it was changed, I think, for the 1984 elections, which was after independence. But whatever it is, if it's 6 months, well, I've been here for 6 months right now, so I qualify. You know, but yes, I think there's so many different aspects to cover, because as Fitzroy says, I mean, it involves our students, people who work in our embassies all over the world. You know, another part of it as well too, people feel as if that, okay, so the political parties are paying for you to come here. I mean, should you pay your own money? You know, and I mean, I don't know if you could tell the political parties, hey, this is how you need to spend your campaign funds. Maybe that's where we need to get into electoral reform that includes campaign financing, where people would now have to start to tell us where you're getting all this money from.
All right. Well, I think we have covered a lot this evening, and I'm sure there's a lot left to be covered. But we are quickly running out of time. And Fitzroy, any final thoughts before we leave?
Well, it's been an interesting conversation, definitely a conversation that has been had since the election, since before the election. How do we reform our electoral system? We have also been looking at candidates, new candidates. We have looked at how have the overseas vote influenced the election in years past, and now we've had the chance this year to see how the lack of an overseas vote would guide the election. I think that I look forward to seeing the changes that we'll be discussing over the next 5 years, and hopefully implementing a few, having those discussions, and as Mr. Ogawa said, starting early in that discussion and having people, all of our population, come on board, understand what is happening and participate in.
Final thoughts?
I think that, I mean, this was an election for the young. You know, I'm not in that category anymore, considering that I was a former junior Calypso King.
Former is the key.
Former is the key word here, the underlying word. But yes, I think in addition to, you know, young people, I think that we definitely need more women in politics as well. I mean, we had what, 11 seats, 23 candidates, and 2 of the candidates were females. I definitely think that, you know, and I don't know, I watched the Anguilla election, and, you know, kind of was a little bit jealous. I mean, they had like 5, 6, 7 women who were either regular candidates or at-large candidates. And so I think that, yeah, with at least 9 candidates being on the young side, I think it augurs well for the future. Even some of those who lost, it gives them time now to, you know, manifest exactly what they were trying to do in 2020, so that they could be prepared for 2025. But I mean, I appreciate the fact that, you know, we had this opportunity to discuss the issues tonight. I want to thank the folks here at ZIZ.
All right. Well, I too would want to thank the folks at ZIZ, and I want to thank you guys for so ably assisting me here tonight as we went through the election that was. We did an examination, some analysis, and I'm sure we have left some things untouched, but we've touched enough, I guess. And hopefully what comes out of this election would be some lessons. Hopefully that the future will see that we go into an election and with a process that is the envy of the rest of the region, because I think it's about time that we take care of a lot of these things that we spoke about this evening have been on the table for so long, and I believe that this may be the moment that we grab it and move forward. Thank you all for joining us here on this discussion this evening. My name is Tony Nice, and I'll see you next time Now we are on ZIZ and we have more discussions. Good night.
Life can be more fulfilling when we take the time out to smell the roses. And that's why your friends and family at the Bank of Nevis are experts at picking the flowers that best describe you. Whether you're planning to treat yourself after a long work week or finally getting around to that closet update, you deserve all the special things that life has to offer. And the Bond Visa card is here to help you achieve it. With just a swipe, you can turn a last-minute lunch date with friends and family into something worth remembering with memories that will last a lifetime. Pampering yourself just got a whole lot easier. And after all, you deserve every refreshing moment of it. The ability to make your travel arrangements at your own convenience, whether by sea or by air, now rests within the palm of your hand. With a single swipe, the Bond Visa card can put a world of difference between life and truly living. Whereas the only limits you may have is your own imagination. Apply today. The Bank of Nevis Limited, improving the quality of life.
In your formative years, we were there. When you got the good news and the bad, we were right there with you. Through all your great adventures, we were always right by your side.